What we're going to go and do today is we're going to take a design that was created in SketchUp of a simple house foundation pad, exported via the SketchUp new export SketchUp module as a job site, and we're going to take that design using SCS 900 and the GNSS receivers and put that design onto the ground and orient it in whatever way that we had wanted to. So we're going to go ahead and show how that's done. So I've already copied over the entire site folder, which was called House, into my SCS 900 data folder. That's House. I've just entered in some basic information for a work order called Stake Corners, and then I'm just going to select the one design that's in there called Foundation. And so when I open that up, we'll get a view of what we're looking at on the screen here. And you can see that we've got a kind of a multi-angled housing design. And at the bottom left and bottom right corners, we've got two little triangles that were inserted during the SketchUp creation process. Those are the control points, and that's what we're actually going to go ahead and base our corner points on. So we're going to end up, picking one corner point on the ground, and we're going to measure out the distance of that baseline, which is 30 feet, and then we're just going to stake out that other point and perform what's called a site calibration. And what that's going to do is that's going to let us orient ourselves and put that design on the ground in whatever kind of orientation that we wanted. So to get this going, I've already have my base GNSS unit over here. That's already set up. It's broadcasting in the base anywhere format, so I had configured that. I've showed that in prior videos. And I just came onto the site, turned it on, left it right there. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect up to a rover. We'll walk through this process again very quickly. We use a Bluetooth connection. And this unit, I forget the serial number, is going to be the last two digits are going to be 78. So that long number there, we'll just connect up with that. That might take a second to get the Bluetooth connection between the controller and the GNSS unit going. So we'll look up into there. It's hooking up. And then we're going to select base anywhere as our correction method. And after, again, as I've said in the prior videos, once you do this once, you shouldn't have to reconfigure, and everything else will be pre-selected, and you would just be able to enter in, get to this rover receiver setup screen, hit accept, and it'll blow by all of that information. But just because I haven't paired this rover with the base, it's always good to remind ourselves how to do this. And so now it'll be looking for the base broadcast that's being transmitted from that base. That is base 1045, so we're going to go ahead and select that one. And it should take a second to check for corrections. And hopefully we'll get a good RTK position. It can take a few minutes. There's a lot of data checking and transferring that's going on here as it's looking for the signal between the two items. And so it's found that correction. I'm using a 2-meter rod height pole here. So that is that 6.562 feet. So we can just go ahead and accept that. It'll finish the rover setup for us, and then it'll bring us right back into that map screen. And so the way that we actually go ahead and orient this design model onto the ground is by performing what's just going to be a 2-point site calibration. So after you make that first connection, it's going to ask if you want to calibrate the site. So we're going to go ahead and hit yes. And then that brings us up into the site calibration table screen here, where we're just going to go ahead and add a point. And that brings us into the map screen. And we're going to go ahead and pick the, actually I'm going to go ahead and pick number 2 here and select that. And then what that's going to do is that's going to bring us into the static mode settings. So I've selected that point, and then what I want to do is I have a marker, I have a nail right in the ground at the location of where I want the corner of my house building to be. So I'm going to just go ahead and put the tip of the rod right on that point, get my bipod all set up and level here, and plumb up my device. Now I'm just going to hit start, and that's going to cook for 15 seconds, take an average of all the positions, and it's going to lock in the that lower right hand corner of that house to this point, which I have a nail in the ground right there. And so after that's done, it'll bring me back into the table to add another point, and then I'm just going to pick that secondary point there, and this is telling me I've got to go 30 feet away. And so what I've done is I just have a rolling tape measure set up to hooked on to that nail that I have in the ground there, and hopefully it's going to stay as I walk 30 feet away. And we want to make sure that this is as close to 30 feet as possible, so that we get the best kind of results, and that that the design on the ground is actually going to be scaled out correctly. So I'm just going to go ahead and walk 30 feet out. Pull this nice and tight. And I'm just going to put a nail right in the ground at the location of that 30-foot mark. Double check my measurements. That's a little off, so I'm going to move that about an inch over into here. And again, just trying to make sure that I'm as accurate as possible, getting it as close to that true 30-foot mark as I can. I mean, it doesn't have to be spot on, but just always good to have better results. So I'm going to go ahead and put the tip of my rod at that point. Hit it in the ground a little bit because it's still a little shaky. There we go. Get my bipod legs out. Put that on the point. Set my bipod legs out. Plumb up my rod here. Getting that bubble level in the center. And then even though my bullseye on the screen is not near the bullseye there, that's because I'm not in a true north orientation, which that's just fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit select here to select that point, hit start. This again will take 15 seconds to do the measurements. And once that's done, we'll get the screen back. We'll be back in that table here, and you'll see that there's the residuals are at 0 and that there's not really much information there. If we had more control points, we'd be able to get a little bit of a tighter calibration, and we would actually be able to get these residuals. But just in this instance, where we're kind of roughly laying out a building foundation, you don't need to worry about those residuals. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit finish, and I'm going to verify that yes, I want to do that. And it asks me that if you want errors, you want the 3 points? Do you want to accept it anyway? I'm just going to go ahead and hit yes on that. I get a calibration complete. And do I want to save the base station as a control point? In this instance, I don't want to do that. And now you'll notice on this map screen that my corner has been located at that bottom corner. So now we have the orientation of our design is properly oriented on this site. And my relative north in SCS 900 is going to be along the baseline between those 2 points. So that's actually going to be up in that direction, even though, true north is pointing up, in this direction. But this is all relative to those 2 points that we put in. So it's a pretty, hopefully straightforward process, and it does allow you to orient your design at any location and orientation that you want. And now that my design's there, I could go ahead and do a whole bunch of things. Like if I wanted to perform staking, I could go ahead and do that. And you'll just notice that even as I come back to that original point where I put that first point, I'm going to be able to go right back on there, and that's right along the baseline there. And for example, if I wanted to stake another one of these inside corners just roughly, I could just kind of walk up in that area. I could zoom right in and just get a quick, quick and dirty way to put where I needed to put a stake for that other building corner. So I can just kind of move that around there. And if I zoom back out, you'll see that I'm now at that corner. So I could, drive a stake right in the ground right there. Or do a whole smattering of other types of possibilities using SCS 900. And then also, you're able to do various measurements as well and the like, and those have been covered in other videos. So that is it. That's how you essentially go ahead and perform a orientation of your model by using the 2 control points that are put in during the the SketchUp modeling process. You just go ahead and use that site calibration routine, select one of the corner points, put a mark on the ground, calibrate the first control point there. Then you're going to pick your second control point, go ahead and calibrate that one, and then that orients the site on the ground for you. Easy as that.